were taught to call it luck, to shrug and move on, to file away the strange alignments as cute stories you tell at dinner and forget by morning. But what if the most important guidance system of your life has been speaking to you in plain sight and you were trained to ignore its voice? Think of the last time you thought of someone you hadn't seen in years and your phone lit up with their name. The odd tug to take a different street that put you in the right place at the right time, the headline, the song lyric. The overheard sentence that arrived with the precision of an arrow aimed at your exact question.
You felt the electricity of it for a second, and then reason stepped in and called it coincidence.
Tonight we break that spell. Tonight we name the code behind the curtain and we make it usable, testable, practical, and deeply personal. So you stop feeling like a passenger in a life you're secretly shaping with every breath. If you are tired of grinding forward while something wiser keeps tapping your shoulder, if you are exhausted from living only by logic, yet suspect there is a second map layered under everything you see, this is your turning point. You are never separate from the field you walk through. Reality is not a mute machine. It is a responsive mirror. Your emotions, your attention, your quietest convictions form the signal, and the world answers that signal with choreography so exact it can feel supernatural until you understand the mechanics. The ache you carry, the missed timing, the near opportunities, the sense that life is almost speaking but you can't quite catch the words, comes from a culture that taught you to discount meaning and worship only what can be measured. It's not your fault, and it is absolutely within your power to change. Imagine living with a radio that has always been tuned a fraction off. You heard static with hints of music and assumed that was all there was. Then, with a small turn of the dial, the song arrives in full, melody, harmony, lyrics that land like medicine. Synchronicity is that turn of the dial. It is not superstition. It is not magical thinking. It is the natural language of an intelligent universe conversing with a conscious participant, and the participant is you. When your inner frequency is scattered by fear and urgency, the messages blur. When your inner frequency is coherent, steady breath, honest feeling, present attention, the messages sharpen, multiply, and assemble into a path you can actually walk. You don't force this, you allow it. You don't beg reality to notice you, you become legible to it. Here is the relief you've been craving. You do not need to become someone else to access this guidance. You do not need rare gifts, secret rituals, or permission from experts who profit from your confusion. You need only two things at the start: willingness to pay attention and the courage to trust what you notice. You have already felt it. The prickle on the skin when a message lands, the soft expansion in the chest when something is right before the evidence arrives, the oddly timed delays that protect you, the effortless alignments that confirm you, the repeating symbols and numbers that seem silly until they refuse to stop appearing. When you stop insulting your own experience by calling it random, the channel clears. When you answer the field with presence instead of skepticism, it replies with precision. Stay with me, and we will unlearn the habit of dismissing our most accurate instrument. We will show how meaning organizes matter, why certain states of heart and mind pull the right people and chances into your orbit, and how to translate the universe's shorthand into steps you can take today. We will examine ancient pattern reading as practical technology, modern research where observation alters outcomes, and the living biology of a body that broadcasts and receives far beyond its skin. Most importantly, we will bring this from theory into the texture of your days. How you choose, how you love, how you work, how you know when to move and when to wait. This is not about collecting signs like souvenirs. It is about partnering with the current that has been quietly arranging your life since before you. Learn the word coincidence. If you have ever felt that life is trying to meet you halfway and you just don't know how to meet it back, listen to the sentence your body already knows. Nothing meaningful in your life has been random. Not the timing, not the detours, not the faces that keep returning. The pattern is not outside of you. It is you, your frequency, your attention, your willingness to respond when the door swings open. The moment you treat synchronicity as guidance instead of trivia, your days begin to carry a different weight and a lighter stride. Choices simplify, noise falls away. The right call arrives at the right hour, because you are broadcasting a stable tone that the world can finally recognize. If this resonates even a little, make one small promise to your future self now, so the channel stays clear. Subscribe so this conversation returns exactly when you need it. And write one short line in the comments to anchor your intention in time. Something your cells can remember when the static tries to creep back. Say, "I choose to notice." That simple sentence is enough to move you from passenger to participant. From here forward, the signs won't just visit you. They will walk with you. When you're ready, say Proximo, and we will step through the door together. You were trained to believe the world is a roll of dice, that events collide without meaning while you do your best to survive the impact. Yet the deeper truth has been quietly present in every uncanny alignment you have ever experienced. Reality is not a blind machine. It is an intelligent field that mirrors your inner state with exquisite accuracy. The reason this feels radical is not because it is untrue, but because you were conditioned to ignore it. From classroom to headline, you were taught to worship only what can be weighed and measured, and to treat your most reliable compass, the felt sense of significance, the subtle pull of timing, as childish fantasy. That conditioning did not erase the field. It only dulled your ear to its music. When you lift that veil even slightly, the ordinary world begins to reveal its choreography. Chance conversations carry answers you had not voiced aloud. A delay that frustrates you by minutes becomes the precise pivot that places you in the right corridor at the right instant. The precision is not coincidence. It is correspondence. The outer event and the inner frequency are meeting like a tuning fork striking its match. At the heart of this is a simple mechanism that your body already understands. Emotion shapes attention, attention shapes signal, and signal shapes experience. When you dwell in contraction, fear, urgency, self-doubt, your system broadcasts a scattered tone that the world reflects through friction and confusion. When you cultivate coherence, steady breath, honest feeling, focused awareness, you emit a stable tone and the environment begins to organize around it. This is not metaphor. You have felt it in rooms where one calm presence steadied a dozen anxious minds, and in days when your quiet confidence seemed to open doors without force. The field prefers order. It moves toward clarity the way iron filings obey a magnet. Synchronicity is the visible seam where inner order meets outer response. When your baseline becomes coherent, the seam appears more often. Not because you are suddenly favored, but because the mirror can finally reflect you without distortion. Ancient cultures treated this conversation with the universe as basic literacy. They read the qualities of a moment the way a sailor reads wind and current. Modern life buried that literacy beneath noise and distraction, yet your nervous system never forgot. It still records the exact second a message lands by softening your chest and widening your breath. It still knows the difference between projection and genuine signal, because truth arrives with a distinct quiet that requires no argument. The task now is not to learn a new language, but to stop interrupting the one you already speak. You interrupt it when you dismiss the meaningful as random, when you rush past small confirmations, when you demand certainty before you act. You restore it when you pause, acknowledge the pattern, and respond with one clear step. The field does not reward analysis. It responds to alignment. Begin to notice how often life tries to meet you halfway. A sentence repeats from 3 unrelated sources on the same day, and you feel the same inner hush each time you hear it. A symbol returns with growing density, a number, an image, a place name, until ignoring it drains more energy than following it. These are not parlor tricks. They are the universe's way of compressing vast information into a form you can feel in a heartbeat. Treat them with respect and they amplify. Treat them as trivia and they fade into static. Your role is not to force meaning onto every leaf that blows across your path, but to honor the moments that carry that unmistakable precision, the click of recognition that settles your whole body by a degree. Follow that click with a single congruent action, and you will watch your reality rearrange around the tone you are choosing to hold. This is why nothing truly important in your life has been random. The difficult cycles that repeat do so because the underlying signal has not changed. The openings that arrive effortlessly do so because, perhaps without noticing, you became coherent enough to receive them. You do not need to chase luck or beg for signs. You need to broadcast clearly. You need to live in a way that lets your inner and outer world speak the same sentence. When you do, The so-called coincidences will stop feeling like surprises and start feeling like the most natural conversation in the world. You do not stumble into guidance, you tune to it. The moment you allow the heart to steady and the breath to lengthen, the world begins to speak in a grammar you can feel more than think. A phrase returns from different mouths with the same calm weight. A number prints itself across receipts, clocks, and street signs until it stops being cute and starts being directional. A stranger's offhand remark resolves a question you never said aloud. This is not the mind hunting for patterns to soothe itself. It is the felt precision of a field translating itself into your language. The body confirms it before the brain does. Your chest loosens by a notch. Your gaze widens. Time seems to thicken, as if the moment wants you to stay inside it a little longer. When you treat that shift as signal rather than trivia, meaning becomes a map you can walk. Translation begins with sincerity. If you approach synchronicity like a code to exploit, the channel clogs and the signals fragment. When you meet it with simple honesty, this moved me, this steadied me, this opened my horizon, the pattern sharpens. You are not assigning arbitrary meanings to random objects. You are noticing how your system responds to specific symbols and situations with consistent clarity. Over days and weeks, a personal lexicon emerges. The same image that visits at every turning point, the song that appears when a risk is aligned, the city name that precedes a needed ending. None of this is superstition. It is the universe compressing guidance into forms you can recognize at a glance, precisely because your life is too fast for paragraphs when a single symbol will do. Skepticism has its place, but cynicism is a blunt instrument that severs you from help. The discerning path is quieter. You learn the texture of true signal by how it lands, not by how grand it sounds. Projection is loud, insistent, hungry for immediate payoff. Genuine guidance is composed. It asks for one honest step, not a leap into fantasy. Follow that one step and the path renews itself, sometimes in minutes, sometimes in days, but always with that same unmistakable steadiness. Ignore it and the field does not punish you. It merely repeats the lesson at a higher volume until the energy cost of resisting exceeds the modest courage required to move. This is where inner coherence turns interpretation into momentum. When your breathing is shallow and your mind is sprinting ahead, you will misread even perfect signals because urgency distorts translation. Slow the physiology and the message clarifies. The heart's rhythm and the brain's rhythm begin to rhyme, and the world rhymes back. Doors that were invisible at full speed appear when you are finally moving at the speed of truth. People call this luck because it flatters the old worldview, but you will feel in your bones that it is correspondence. Your tone called and reality answered on the same note. There is a humility to this way of living that makes it powerful. You stop demanding certainty from the entire future and ask only for the next sentence of the conversation. Often the answer is a nudge so small it would be easy to dismiss. A call to make, a street to walk, a sentence to write, a pause to take. Yet these small obediences compound. They realign the day, then the week, then the architecture of a life. In time, you will look back and recognize that the moments you honored for their quiet precision became the hinges on which everything turned. And you will trust the next hinge when it appears, not because you have adopted a new belief, but because you have gathered proof in your own bloodstream that meaning, when honored, becomes movement. Reality does not meet you at the level of your opinions. It meets you at the level of your vibration. Long before your mind can assemble an explanation, your body is already broadcasting a tone into the world and reading the tone that comes back. This is why days that begin with frantic scrolling so often dissolve into static, while mornings that open with one deliberate breath seem to flow with an ease that logic cannot account for. Your heart, lungs, and nervous system are not passive passengers. They are the instrument through which consciousness becomes a frequency the field can recognize. The feeling you inhabit most consistently, trust or tension, gratitude or grasping, sets the carrier wave of your experience. And the universe, which favors order over noise, answers in kind. You can sense this translation in real time if you are willing to slow enough to feel it. Notice how fear tightens the jaw and narrows the gaze until the world appears as a corridor of threats, each choice looking like a trap disguised as an opportunity. Notice how one sincere breath softens the architecture of your chest, and how that softening widens attention just enough for a solution to step into view that was invisible 30 seconds ago. Nothing mystical happened. Signal quality changed. Your inner metronome shifted from a staccato of defense to a legato of coherence, and the outer environment reorganized around the new beat. The mind rushes to claim victory with a tidy story, yet your body knows it was the rhythm that did the work. This is why forcing yourself to think positive while your physiology is broadcasting panic never works for long. The field reads the dominant tone, not the decorative surface. If the breath is shallow and the heart is erratic, affirmations become confetti tossed into the wind. When the breath extends and the heart finds a steady arc, the same words carry weight because they ride a stable current. In practice, this means you do not fix life by wrestling with thoughts. You retune the instrument that is generating them. 1 minute of deliberate breathing, 1 minute of unclenched attention, 1 minute of honest feeling allowed to move through without judgment will do more to alter your trajectory than an hour of strained self-talk. The body is the gate, and coherence is the key that opens it. You have witnessed this in the presence of people whose very being steadies a room. They are not pushy or grand. They do not manage the space with charisma. They simply emit a signal clean enough that others can find their own center in its wake. This is not magic. It is physics expressed through compassion. Coherence entrains coherence the way a well-tuned instrument brings a wandering choir back to pitch.
When you inhabit that steadiness yourself, synchronicities gather like iron filings aligning to a magnetized line.
Emails arrive the moment you exhale. The exact phrase you needed to hear crosses your path as if it were ordered for delivery to your doorstep at the precise hour your courage could receive it. Luck is the word we use when we have not yet learned to name the music. The practical doorway is disarmingly simple. Begin not by interrogating fate, but by teaching your body the sensation of safety without requiring the world to provide it first. Let the breath lengthen until your exhale is a shade longer than your inhale, not as performance but as permission. Let your attention rest in the heart area, as if listening for a quiet rhythm beneath the noise. Let whatever you are feeling be felt completely without the reflex to fix or flee. In that sincerity, the instrument retunes itself. The mind notices that options have multiplied. The day loosens its knots, and the messages that once felt like whispers in a storm begin to sound like clear bells you could follow in the dark. From there, the path ahead does not demand heroic certainty. It asks only that you keep playing the note that tells the universe you are ready to receive what already belongs to the frequency you are becoming. What you are beginning to feel in your bones, older cultures treated as ordinary literacy. They did not walk through a mute universe. They moved through a speaking field. The sages of the valley cast coins not to outsource their choices, but to read the texture of a moment, the way a navigator reads wind on water. Temple builders carved living symbols because they understood that meaning is not decoration. Meaning is instruction. Shamans listened for the way a bird's sudden arc could complete a thought the mind had not finished, because they trusted that the world is one sentence being spoken from many mouths. None of this was superstition. It was a practical physics of attention long before the word physics was invented. Modern life trained you to call this pattern making and to dismiss it with a shrug, but the dismissal has a cost. When you refuse the language of correspondence, you also refuse the help that language provides. The field does not stop speaking. It simply routes its messages back through pressure until what you would not hear as a whisper returns as a deadline, a detour, a diagnosis. The instant you admit the conversation is real, the tone changes. Coincidences stop feeling cute and start feeling precise. The right phrase appears in a book you almost didn't open. A number repeats with an insistence that is less spectacle than certainty. A dream places a key in your palm, and days later a door you did not know existed fits it exactly. In that shift from dismissal to dialogue, probability becomes pliable. Think of reality as a hologram whose image is rebuilt at every instant from the interference of two lights, the light of the world and the light you emit. Each small fragment contains the whole pattern, which is why one symbol can carry an entire instruction. and why a single felt moment can redirect months of inertia. You are not manipulating the image with a clever trick. You are changing the angle of your participation so the interference pattern resolves into a different picture. When your inner tone grows coherent, the film the world projects onto becomes smooth enough to hold finer detail. What looked like static resolves into signal. What looked like random movement reveals choreography you can join. This is also why secrecy has always gathered around this knowledge. A person who can read the field and answer it becomes uneconomical to control. They make fewer frantic purchases because they no longer soothe confusion with consumption. They obey fewer false urgencies because they feel the difference between noise and necessity in their ribcage. They are gentle, but they are not compliant, and a gentle, non-compliant human is power in its cleanest form. You do not need to argue with systems when your life quietly slips the hooks of their assumptions. Your days begin to organize around resonance rather than spectacle. And those who still believe control is the only technology cannot understand why doors open for you without a key card. Skeptics will ask for a mechanism, as if meaning must apply for a license to exist. The mechanism is hiding in plain sight. Attention alters experience because attention alters the body, and the body is the antenna that couples you to the field. Coherence is not a mood. It is a measurable change in rhythm that turns your signal from scattered whispers into a clear broadcast. From there, the so-called external world stops behaving like an obstacle course and begins to behave like an amplifier. Information shows up on time. People align without being pushed. Timing acquires a kindness that looks from the outside like luck. From the inside, it feels like coming home to a grammar you somehow always knew. None of this asks you to abandon reason. It asks you to retire the superstition that reason alone is sovereign. The mind is a brilliant lens. It is not the light. Place it in service to the light and it resolves the world with breathtaking clarity. Leave it in charge of the light and it will slice truth into fragments sharp enough to cut you. The older way and the future way is simpler. Feel for the seam where meaning gathers. Steady your instrument until the seam warms under your palm, and take the next exact step that reveals itself from that warmth. Do this faithfully, and the web that once looked invisible begins to carry your weight. You are not being invited into a belief. You are being invited back into participation. The field is not an oracle that lives somewhere else. It is the medium of your own awareness, and it is dense with responses the moment you become sincere enough to listen. When you meet it there, you stop trying to bend reality to your will and allow reality to unfold to your tone. And the more consistently you live at that tone, the more the world answers with evidence that would be difficult to dismiss and unnecessary to defend, because it will be written not only across your circumstances, but across your heartbeat. Recognition is the first threshold. Translation is the walk across the bridge. Once you accept that life is speaking, the next devotion is learning how it speaks to you in particular, because the field is fluent in universals, yet exquisitely personal in its grammar. What startles someone else may arrive to you as a soft repeat of symbols that feel intimate, the way a certain fragrance can return an entire season to your body. The task is not to adopt a catalogue of prefabricated meanings, but to cultivate a living vocabulary drawn from the dialogue between your inner state and the outer choreography that answers it. You do this the way a musician trains an ear, by listening daily, by noting tonal shifts, by letting patterns reveal themselves through gentle attention rather than impatient demand. Begin by honoring the first flicker of significance instead of arguing it back into silence. The mind will try to file it under coincidence because coincidence is easier on the ego than intimacy, but your chest knows the difference between accident and arrival. Notice how a number repeats with a timing that is too exact to be dismissed, how a phrase follows you from a stranger's conversation to the line of a song, to the page you opened without thinking, how the same animal appears at thresholds as if escorting you from one interior room to another. Notice how dreams begin to lace daylight with a thread that tightens when you are about to make a choice that contradicts your deeper promise. These recurrences are not there to impress you. They are there to align you. The more gently you receive them, the more precise they become. Because gentleness is what keeps the instrument in tune. There is a warmth to true correspondence that cannot be forged. When the sign is real, your body answers before your story does. A soft swell behind the sternum, the distinct sense that time just thickened, a stillness as if the room leaned closer. When the interpretation is projection, the sensation is brittle. You are trying to force a shape onto the moment because it would be convenient if it meant what you want. The difference is subtle but reliable. Fidelity to that difference turns your life into a training ground for discernment, and discernment is how you keep your compass honest when desire is loud. You are not learning a superstition. You are learning your own resonance map, and the map becomes more legible every time you choose sincerity over speed. Writing is the cradle where this lexicon matures. Give the patterns a place to land by recording them as soon as they arrive, not to hoard proof but to refine listening. A small scene you nearly ignored on Tuesday will often complete itself on Friday, as if two halves of a sentence finally found each other. Over weeks, the sketches become a portrait, and the portrait begins to speak back with instruction you can trust. You discover that certain signals accompany clarity, while others tend to appear when old fear is steering the wheel in a charming disguise. You discover that the pull toward a sudden action is clean when it comes with ease in your breath, and suspect when it requires you to tighten in order to justify it. You discover that the field never whispers urgency in tones that make you small. It guides in ways that leave you more spacious, even when the choice is bold. Digital life does not interrupt this conversation. It extends it. The message that lands the instant your thought asked for it is not merely the product of code. It is the echo of intention finding a path through whatever channels are available. The song that starts precisely on the line you needed is not proof of a haunted device. It is evidence that electricity is also a river the field can use. Meet these moments with calm respect rather than superstition, and they will continue to serve as clean corridors rather than tangled webs. The point is never to turn every disturbance into an omen, but to feel when the fabric of the day gathers itself into a coherence that asks for your attention. When you respond from that steadiness, small choices begin to function like levers that move far more than their weight should allow. As your lexicon stabilizes, you will notice that decisions no longer require theatrical certainty. You will take the step that carries both meaning and relief, and the next stepping stone will rise to meet your foot as if the path were assembling itself under your weight. This is not passivity. It is participation at a finer grain of timing, where effort is still required but struggle is not. You will stop chasing signs for comfort and start welcoming them as companions in responsibility, because each precise correspondence arrives with an invitation to act in alignment with the frequency that called it. Before the mind can convince you otherwise, feel what your body already knows. Every thought you entertain pulls a thread in your chest. Every feeling you consent to colors your breath. Your ribs either widen to meet the moment or narrow to brace against it. And that simple motion tells you more about your future than 1,000 forecasts. You do not broadcast reality with slogans. You broadcast it with rhythm. When you steep in gratitude, your breath lengthens, your pulse smooths, and a quiet order spreads through your muscles like dawn touching a lake. That order is not just comfort, it is a signal. Reality hears it. Doors that once required battering relax on their hinges, not because the world suddenly grew polite, but because your tone stopped arguing with itself and became a single, steady invitation that the field can answer cleanly. This is why forcing positivity exhausts you while honest presence renews you. Pretending to glow while your jaw is locked only teaches your system to fake coherence, and the field reads faking as noise. Real alignment asks something different and far kinder. It asks you to feel exactly what is here without theatrics, to let the wave move all the way through so its charge dissolves instead of looping. The instant you acknowledge the truth of your state, your physiology begins to reorganize around that honesty. Shoulders drop, vision widens, breath resumes its rightful depth, and in that dignity of being as you are, the signal clarifies. You are not punished for fear. You are mirrored in it. You are not rewarded for joy. You are resonant in it. The field is faithful, and your body, more faithful still, will tell you which station you are tuned to long before life delivers the matching scene. Coherence is not an abstract virtue. It is the felt sense of your heart and head keeping the same time. When that happens, timing in the outer world follows suit. The call arrives before you craft the perfect pitch. The path clears as you place your foot, not 10 steps in advance to soothe your preference for guarantees, but exactly on beat with your willingness to move. This is why intuition becomes practical the moment you stop treating it as a special effect and start treating it as hygiene. A few slow breaths to wash noise from your circuits.
A hand at your sternum to remind the mind who sets the tempo.
A brief return to the posture that tells truth. Spine long, jaw soft, gaze present. From that exactness, the next action is rarely dramatic, but it is quietly precise, and precision is what moves mass with minimal effort. If you have ever noticed how some people seem to relax rooms simply by entering them, you have witnessed coherent broadcasting. Nothing mystical is required, only consistency. They have rehearsed a baseline tone, calm, lucid, open, so many times that their nervous system holds it the way a string holds a note once it is tuned. That note moves outward without a speech, and other instruments drift toward it because harmony is the simplest mathematics life knows. You can be that instrument without spectacle. Keep your agreements with your breath. Speak from the place behind your ribs where warmth gathers when something is true. Decline urgency that shrinks you, even when it arrives wearing opportunity's mask. Say yes to the choices that leave you more spacious even when they stretch you. Do this long enough and your days begin to orbit a different center. The same city feels kinder. The same faces feel new. Chance stops feeling like dice and starts feeling like choreography. There is a tenderness to this power because it depends on intimacy with your own signals. You begin to notice the micro-flares of contraction that used to pass as normal and treat them as guidance rather than fate. A silent flinch before you agree becomes a reason to pause. A lightness in the belly when a name appears becomes permission to proceed. Over time, this attention turns your body into a compass so reliable that strategy becomes a partner, not a tyrant. You still plan. You simply refuse to plan against your inner weather. And in that refusal, you become trustworthy to the field. It answers trust with precision. It routes information through strangers and songs and sudden detours, not to entertain you, but to keep you on the frequency where the life you mean to live is already humming. Keep returning to that frequency gently and often, and the proof accumulates in a language you cannot mistake. Fewer battles, clearer invitations, a steadier joy that asks for nothing. Loud and offers something unmistakable, causality. From the inside out, the field does not speak to you only in numbers on a clock or phrases that follow you from song to book to stranger. It speaks through people, and this is where the grammar becomes exquisitely precise. Every encounter carries a temperature, a pressure, a scent of memory that rises before any story forms. The friend who appears just as you are tempted to betray your own pace is not an accident. The colleague whose presence steadies your breath during a storm is not convenience. The stranger who irritates you for reasons you cannot name is not a random grain of sand. They are signals wearing faces, mirrors with heartbeat and voice, and the reflection is not about blame, but about direction. What you meet in them is the tone you are transmitting, amplified to a volume you cannot ignore. When you treat relationships as weather, you notice how your inner climate sets the sky. In love, synchronicity becomes a teacher with a velvet hand. The person who draws out your tenderness is proof that your heart is no longer barricaded. The one who awakens your old fear is an invitation to close loops rather than repeat them. The task is not to mold the other into a shape that soothes you, but to meet what they reflect with enough honesty that your signal cleans itself. You learn to feel the difference between attraction that expands you and chemistry that collapses you, between urgency masquerading as destiny and a quiet certainty that does not need to shout. When the body loosens as you lean forward, when your voice becomes clearer without effort, when silence between you feels like a room with open windows, the field is whispering yes. When your breath shortens and your mind crafts explanations to outrun the ache, the field is asking you to tend the ache before you make a vow with it. Work obeys the same law. Opportunities arrive with timing that would be hard to script when your contribution and your frequency agree on why you are here. The project that keeps advancing on a cushion of unlikely support is not lucky. It is coherent. The role that pays well but requires you to abandon the cadence of your own thought is not success. It is an elegant detour if you use it as a lesson and a trap if you call it your home. You begin to choose offers by the way your nervous system responds in their presence. The proposal that sharpens your attention while softening your jaw is a bridge. The one that needs you to tighten to justify it is a toll you will pay with your light. Over time, this fidelity to sensation rewrites your definition of achievement. You stop climbing the loudest ladder and start building the quiet architecture that fits your soul's weight. Family becomes the most intricate mirror of all because it reflects the first frequencies you learned to carry. Patterns return not to humiliate you, but to confirm your growth. The same holiday table, the same sentence that used to hook you, the same look across the room, and suddenly your body does not march into rehearsal. You breathe, you answer from the part of you that is older than the story, and the script dissolves without a fight. This is synchronicity at work inside lineage, a recalibration that radiates outward whether anyone names it or not. Your steadiness becomes an invisible permission slip. Rooms feel different when you sit in them. The field records that difference and roots grace through the ordinary. A softened exchange in the kitchen, a laugh where a wound used to rise, a small apology that would have been impossible a year ago. Nothing flashy, everything changed. Ethics in this landscape is no longer a list kept on the wall. It is the lived understanding that every projection returns as a reflection. You speak with more care, not from fear of consequence, but from intimacy with resonance. You refuse to manipulate because you can feel the residue it leaves in your chest. You decline victimhood because it robs you of the only instrument you truly command, which is the tone you carry. You take responsibility for your part in the music without taking responsibility for every sound in the room, and that distinction restores your strength. The result is not sanctimony but usefulness. You become someone reality can trust with a wider corridor of influence, and it sends you into places that need your note. Even the digital world submits to this relational alchemy. Messages land at the exact minute you ask a question in the privacy of your own thought. A line of text on a screen arrives with the same weight as a hand on your shoulder if your body knows it is answering a prayer you barely dared to voice. Treat these currents with grounded reverence, and they will thread you to allies and teachings you could not have found by map alone. Treat them as fortune-telling, and you will drift into noise. The difference, again, is in the breath. Coherence makes technology a flute. Incoherence turns it into static. In the end, relational synchronicity asks for one brave practice: meet each person as a message first and a role second. When you do, gratitude becomes the basic temperature of your day. Not because everyone behaves the way you prefer, but because every interaction reveals where your signal is bright and where it is still learning to sing. That humility does not make you smaller. We have walked from the static between two stations to the steady signal of a coherent life, from forcing outcomes to allowing resonance to do the heavy lifting. You learned to release what was crowding the soil, to breathe until your nervous system remembered safety, to observe emotion without merging with it, and to thicken the present so possibility could finally collapse into form. You saw how the body is not a bystander but a transmitter, how DNA listens to the feeling you sustain and translates that music into matter, how relationships function as living mirrors, returning your broadcast with precise fidelity. You witness that synchronicity is not decoration on the path. It is the path revealing itself in real time when you are honest enough to hear it. And you felt the shift from identity to awareness, from playing a role to standing as the witness who can choose a clean tone even when the old script knocks with familiar urgency. Take this with you. Coherence is not a mood, it is a practice. The breath is your tuner. Appreciation is your amplifier. Space is your architecture. When you hold them daily, the field organizes around you with a quiet exactness that needs no slogans. Opportunities meet you where you actually are, not where you pretend to be. People arrive who match your steadiness rather than your fear. Timing stops behaving like luck and starts behaving like physics. You stop bargaining with life and start collaborating with it. This is not a promise of perpetual ease. It is a commitment to clean returns. Even when turbulence visits, and it will, you will recover your center faster, because your baseline is no longer panic but presence. Let this ending be a beginning you can enact today. Before you touch your next decision, give yourself 3 slow cycles of breath that lengthen the exhale. Name, gently and without judgment, the strongest feeling moving through your chest. Ask, not for a guarantee, but for a question that loosens the fist. What choice would keep my signal clear 1 hour from now? Then step there. If you meet resistance, do not wrestle, widen. Release one obligation that shrinks you and replace it with 1 minute of stillness that enlarges you. If a pattern you thought you had outgrown returns, treat it as the spiral doing its honest work. Answer from the part of you that knows the old story and no longer needs it to feel safe. This is how you become reliable to yourself and therefore reliable to the field. We are not isolated transmitters. We are tuning forks in a shared room. Your steadiness makes it easier for someone you will never meet to choose theirs. Your clarity becomes instruction without words. Your refusal to manipulate becomes trust the moment you enter a space. This is the quiet economy of coherence. It compounds. And in a noisy world, a clear note is not only healing, it is leadership. If this spoke to you, seal it with action that keeps the conversation alive. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so we can keep practicing together in rhythm rather than in bursts. Share in a comment 1 sentence that names the frequency you are choosing to embody for the next 24 hours. Peace, courage, honesty, patience, and how you will recognize it in your body. If there is someone whose timing could change with a single helping breath, send this to them. The field listens when we name what we intend to sustain. Thank you for your attention, for your willingness to feel, and for the invisible work you will do when no one is watching. I am grateful to have traveled this arc with you. Breathe slowly. Hold your posture as if the future were listening, because it is. Let your life be the proof that the universe answers coherence with coherence. Until our next meeting, keep the note.